Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. You will hear from industry leaders covering innovative, cutting-edge business, learning, and HR topics that weave current market research and technology into each episode. Our Excellence at Work podcast is hosted by Brandon Hall Group's Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Hi, I'm Rachel Cook, the host of Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast, and I am excited to have with me today Katie Ballantyne, the VP Global Learning Strategy and Innovation from Cornerstone. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hi, Rachel. I'm really well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great, and we're going to be talking about the importance of enabling talent mobility for organizations and their people. And you just recently kind of shifted into a new position, so congratulations.
Thank you. Cornerstone has been very good to me. I've been with Cornerstone for 9 years, and I think this is my 6th position at Cornerstone, so a very talent mobile company that definitely lives the values that we espouse. So I'm very fortunate to have that opportunity here.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to kind of learning more about your new role and your experience, and also kind of your perspective on talent mobility. And we've seen from our research and from a lot of our discussions that we've been having how important talent mobility is for engagement. It's one of the critical factors that may be a decision as to what keeps an employee engaged and retained is the opportunities to have different experiences and different opportunities to move across the organization, whether it's lateral or upward. So so there's a whole wealth of reasons, or a whole I think a whole number of reasons why it is important. So I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are, and maybe just tell us a little bit more about your background. And you mentioned you've been at Cornerstone for 9 years. They are an impressive company. I remember when they first got started. I think it was in what year was that? That was 2013, maybe?
2010, I believe. Yeah, 2010.
Maybe even sooner than that. So I think I was just coming into the learning industry, and I just remember when they started emerging and emerging fast.
Yeah. I remember early stage in my career starting to see jobs pop up for LMS administrators and being like, what is that? Why do you need a specialization in that? So yeah, it is interesting seeing how this whole HR tech space has really grown as well within the past 20 years. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. So for my background, so I'm from Australia, and I was studying to be an accountant, and I love maths. I love numbers. I love a well-balanced P&L. And I did an internship in HR, and I was absolutely captivated by the field. And I just thought, oh gosh, this is where I was supposed to be the whole time. I was always supposed to be, supporting people and supporting the strategy of business through people. And I switched my degree and decided to specialize instead in HR and industrial relations. And from there, I got recruited to a company here in North America. And with them, I was with them for multiple years, and kind of a similar situation with talent mobility. There would be a tap on the shoulder, which would say, hey, we could really use you in this location. Would you be interested in going? Would you be interested in doing this? Got some incredible career progression through them, and ended up being able to specialize in learning and development. And through the course of my career, that's where I came in touch with Cornerstone. We actually implemented and deployed Cornerstone, multiple modules, at a very large company that I was with. And I loved the technology, and I loved understanding now what an LMS administrator did and why it was such an important role for a business. But more than anything, I could see how we were able to support so many more learners in the organization as a result of what we were doing and how we were doing it. So when I had the chance to come to Cornerstone, it just seemed an incredible opportunity, because working with a company like us, and we've got 7,000 customers around the world, you get to work with companies that are absolutely on the cutting edge of everything talent management and talent development, and just seeing what these companies are doing and how they're creating exceptional workplaces and how they're using technology as a vehicle to help achieve their strategy. It's incredibly inspiring and an extremely privileged place to be, and to be able to come and work in service of, the learning and talent management professionals worldwide every day.
It really is an interesting industry where you get to see so much, and there's so much what companies do to help, whether it's to help their clients perform better or to help them be more efficient in their jobs, but also what they do for the communities around. And I know that also Cornerstone has a foundation that serves, not just your clients, but also the social communities around you. So that's, something that, is an indicator of what kind of company that you're with. So that's great. And I think also as we kind of some of us fall into the learning industry or HR, it's not something previously, probably a couple of decades, that you heard a lot of when you were younger in your elementary school or even college so much, until you kind of got into the workplace. And now it's starting to there's more degrees in HR, and there's more, I think, awareness of these type of positions than ever before. And what do you, we talk about talent mobility and the opportunities that it offers. Can you expand a little bit more about what it is and how it is different today versus previously?
Yeah, I think fundamentally at its core, talent mobility is the ability for someone to have more than one job in their time working with your company. So it's their ability to not just stay in the role that they were hired for, but to do other things within your business. And that can come from two angles, in my opinion. It can come from the business angle where, the classic tap on the shoulder of, hey, you've got these wonderful talents, these wonderful skills. We could really use those to help us with this new initiative or this new venture that we're going on. We saw it, maybe with your more planned succession pooling, for example. A lot of businesses, for example, consultancies, have utilized more of the agile labor models that have focused very much so on your talent being mobile across projects. But then there's the other aspect now, which is talent mobility as something that an individual has enough agency over to be able to pursue. And I think that that's a really big difference right now, because in the past, it's my opinion that talent mobility was more company driven. It was that, it was the quiet hiring phenomenon that we're seeing right now. Like, that's always been around. We've always known that. But, it's just more prominent these days, and it's got a cute, catchy term. But, the organizations have always made sure that when they needed talent to be mobile, that they could make it mobile. But now I think that there's quite a fundamental shift in saying, oh gosh, we need to give people more tools so that they can look at what talent mobility would mean to them, and they can have, once again, more agency over where their career could take them, because people are seeing the incredible benefit that this has. And you brought it up earlier on engagement. And we all know that engagement, we don't do it just for benevolence. We focus on the engagement of our people because it's a core strategy that helps us perform. It helps us save money. It helps us keep knowledge in-house. It helps us stay aggressive in how we approach the market. So it's a really, really powerful tool that people are using now, and seeing that when we can give people mobility, it benefits us as a business and it keeps them engaged. So it's really, really a virtuous cycle in many ways.
Right. And I think you just answered my question as to why companies should prioritize around talent mobility right now, for all those reasons.
Well, and I think that, and there's even more, Rachel, and you're right, because the engagement one's huge. So what we've found, Cornerstone, we recently did a talent mobility, some research. And what we found is that 73% of employees globally are looking for talent mobility options to be publicly available to them. And when people are able to see what is available, they're more likely to say that they want to stay with the company. Converse to that, when people don't see mobility as an option within a business, they're 3 times more likely to be looking for another job. So when you think about the skills shortage that continues to endure, when you think about the fact that we're still having a war for talent, we've got the lowest unemployment rate in 53 years. Just because we're seeing some isolated pockets of layoff doesn't mean that we're actually seeing a long-term trend here. We're still competing for talent. We're still competing to find those people for jobs that, didn't exist 20 years ago. So businesses are absolutely seeing the need for talent mobility strategies to help them find the talent that they're going to need for long-term viability of their business, while also seeing it as a strategy that they can use to invest back in their people, increase engagement, increase sense of belonging, and then as a result, decrease attrition from the business.
And how can companies or organizations enable talent mobility across their workforce today? What should they do for managers and what should they do for their employees?
Yeah. Our study showed that 80% of employees want to start a talent mobility journey by having some kind of a digital destination to go to. And when I think about it, Rachel, we really have been trained within society now, I think, to utilize a lot of technology that's available to help us get started with a lot of things. Think about even like the airline experience. That's a very digital experience these days. And we're seeing more and more. I know, Brandon Hall has had some wonderful research out on this, just that expectation of employee experience matching a very consumer level experience. So employees are wanting to start at a digital destination, and it also makes sense when you think about comfort level. It's a big deal to go to your boss and say, so I'm looking at a different job within the company. Imagine then if something doesn't show up or something doesn't transpire, that person could have potentially impacted their relationship with their manager. So what people are looking for is a place to go where they can see what are the opportunities that are available. What is the company looking for? Is the company demonstrating that it wants to hire from within or show an internal growth perspective? So these systems that we've got these days are extremely helpful with this, because if you think about the volume of careers that are now available, a lot of people don't even know where to start. You mentioned it earlier. Careers aren't just linear anymore. It's not just a career path or a career lattice. Careers are really omnidirectional at this point. And when we've got jobs that didn't exist, 10, 20 years ago, a podcast producer, that job didn't exist. That's a job now. That requires skills. What about if someone has the right skills that would make them perfect for that role? They want to know, where can I go from here? If I could choose my own adventure, my talent mobility adventure, where could it take me? And then as a result of that, help me understand what to do to get there. And this is wonderful. This really leans into the democratization of learning that we're seeing right now. And what we can do with a lot of our systems now is be able to say, let me create a personalized skill and learning journey for you based on where you are today and where you want to be. And here's the learning you should take. And here's a great mentor for you. So here's a great way to increase your network, which is very important when you think of a very digital world now and not being in an office together. Here's a project that you can use to try on your new skills. And then, maybe you could even go and work in a gig to make sure that you really like a job before you make a commitment to change. So these are the types of tools that we're finding that employees are expecting and really, really enjoying when they have as part of their employee value proposition. When you flip that to the manager perspective, these tools are helping managers be what the employees need them to be. We know that the role of the leader has shifted fundamentally over the past 15 years, and then seismically over the past 3 years especially, with what organizations need leaders to be and what employees need leaders to be. And employees used to look to their leader a lot to say, well, what should I do? Where should I go with my career? Like, what are options for me? And it's hard for that manager. They've only probably have their lived experience or what maybe a friend or a colleague has done. They don't have infinite knowledge of every single skill that's out there and what you could do to get you from A to B. So by having these tools, and for an employee to be able to say, oh, hey, I went and checked this out. I'm really interested in becoming a genetic counselor. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what that career progression would look like. And what you also see then companies doing is complementing this with, for managers, Rachel, with coaching training. So teaching the leaders the skills of coaching and then mapping it up to the technology helping the employee, it really helps them be at a place where they can serve that employee and help be a wonderful coach and mentor to them in their career progression. So I think it's a really interesting phenomenon that we're seeing, and I think it gives a lot more people access to growth than I've ever seen in my career.
And hopefully, I believe that it'll help shorten that skill gap, because companies still report that more than half of their workforce, they feel that they don't have the right skills or the skills they need to propel the business forward or to sustain the business. So, and this continues, the numbers don't change much if you've seen from year to year, at least for like the last decade or so. So, and you have this big gap shortage between the millennials and the Zen Gen and the baby boomers and the rise. So there's this big kind of gap between the two and the skill gap. And so with offering talent mobility opportunities, that will help shorten. And we see from the, as you just mentioned here, and also our research shows that if there are, if they're aware of these opportunities, that they will more likely stay or explore these options than go elsewhere. And we also see that there's this need to retain top talent and kind of the term, talent hoarding. So how do you balance managers that don't want to lose their talent to other positions, but by doing so, it's better for the business? So what do we do there as learning professionals or as companies?
Yeah. So I have always said that if you have a talent hoarding problem at your business, so it's not like this is just one or two leaders who have this tendency. If you have a talent hoarding problem at your business, that's not a manager problem, that's a culture problem. So when I think about that, I think about why would someone hoard their talent? And when you're thinking about deploying a highly effective, high impact talent mobility strategy, you've got to be thinking through what could be those inhibitors, those roadblocks to change within our business. So for example, I once had a person within my team who got promoted to another division within the company, and then I lost my backfill. I still have never been able to backfill that person. And how does that encourage me as a leader to give up talent if I'm going to lose my backfill? And so you've got to think about things like that. How is that going to impact you? Some other inhibitors, so other managers might be inhibited to share talent and may demonstrate hoarding behaviors for things such as your recruiting pipeline might take a really long time. Maybe you are on a 3 to 4 month fill time because you're going heavily externally for talent and you don't have people kind of ready to go internally. So that can be an inhibitor. So I think about, okay, if pipeline's a challenge, how do we make sure then that we've got more mobility internally and people ready to step in? Another challenge could even be how much work it takes you to onboard somebody again. So what about if you don't have those kind of scale systems within your business that help someone ramp up and get up to speed? Who's that work falling on? The leader. And they don't need any more work, because as we all see from the studies these days, we're asking more and more and more and more of middle management. And then just one other thing I think about is that if somebody leaves a role, where does that work go during that period where that position is open? And, so something like, does your business actively practice project realignment and project reprioritization? So if your team capacity has now just been decreased by 10% due to the transition of an FTE, does that leader have the permission and the right to be able to recalibrate workload on their team, or to be able to shift a priority down the line? So when I really think about talent hoarding, I think about how we can make sure as a culture that we're setting up our mobility strategies with being very, very, very thoughtful to what might not want to make a manager share their talent. And I think if we do that, I think that people then are a lot more open, because they want the experience for themselves too. They want to know that they're able to be mobile within their careers personally. So I do think that it's incumbent on us as talent leaders to orchestrate the culture in a way to make sure that talent hoarding isn't happening. Because also when people do see talent hoarding in place, it's often also correlated to not showing that there's opportunities available, which then obviously has a very negative effect on your business.
Well, then people will be less inclined to maybe perhaps pursue a position, because if they feel that once they're there, they're stuck, and they may not necessarily quite be ready for that, or be, they don't want to be pigeonholed into a certain area, or they want to still have, the ability to explore. And then on the flip side of that, how do organizations balance the growth of the business and the growth needs of, or the growth desires of an employee and the growth needs of the business too? Because, there's a fine balance there. You have to have, and I think also, I see this a lot with some of the younger generations coming in, that they want to go from project to project, or from position to position, without really spending enough time in their particular role to gain the experience and understanding of what it is, and to be able to do it well before kind of moving on to something else.
So not really getting to those full proficiency levels, because we know that with skills, right? Like you can be highly proficient or less proficient, and not taking the time to invest in that. It's a very good point, Rachel. And I really think that what you're talking about here, with that ability for a business to decide exactly how mobile they want their talent to be and how open they want this to be, I really do think it's predicated on the business's strategy. So for example, if you're a business that knows that you are having huge challenges with labor supply, and you are in an industry that's projected to have even more challenges moving forward, and you're going to have to move into very creative labor modeling. So for example, maybe you're going to be embracing sunset careers. Maybe you're going to be looking at some non-traditional, workforce participants. I think that you would approach your talent mobility strategy in a very different way, to make sure that you were being a lot more open and a lot more embracing of more people who'd be putting up their hands and saying that I want to participate. If you're a business that maybe there's not a huge volume of turnover within your business, maybe there's high role stability with people, they very, very long role tenure, you might want to throttle the way that you're talking about talent mobility with, having multiple experiences in a very short period, for example, like through changing your job, You might want to throttle that in how you communicate the strategy. You might want to control a little bit more how much you're putting out there, but instead you might want to emphasize some of the other factors that help with talent mobility over the long term. Something you brought up with millennials and Gen Z, they're wanting to curate experiences. Curating experiences does not have to mean switching jobs. Curating experiences can mean gigs and projects and doing different types of work while still in your role. And then you can avoid that challenge of someone, job hopping too fast where they don't really even gain that fundamental level of proficiency within a position. So I think that companies can definitely have very, very, very different approaches to how they build their talent mobility strategy. And it's always just going to be predicated on, what do you need? What is your labor supply looking like? What are the challenges you anticipate? And then how open are you going to make this system, or how are you going to utilize aspects of a talent mobility system to help you achieve those goals?
So this all makes sense, right? And now how do we do it? How do we track the skills and capabilities and make sure that organizations have that insight into what they need better?
It's definitely going to sound dodgy here because I come from a technology company, but the only way that I have to answer this one is that when it comes to skills, you have to lean into tech. I don't know how we're going to do skills effectively, Rachel, without tech, because there's just so many. And it's the challenge that many of us used to face when we were unpacking a competency and you're like, oh, gracious, this competency exists of like 40, 50 skills that need to all build upon each other. You're like, aha, you can go down a rabbit hole, right? So I really do think that skills technology is key here, with the first piece being making it routine for people to be talking about skills, updating their skills. Maybe you're in your weekly check-ins and you're like, oh gosh, that's a skill I want to develop. So constantly be thinking about what skills do I have? What skills do I want to develop? Because that data helps you, right? Because that's it's a baseline of what you've got. And two, it's telling you what people are interested in so that you can really respond as an L&D team. Then the other piece of this is that when you have a position, being able to lean into the skills tech to be able to say, oh, we need data scientists. What are the core skills that a data scientist needs? How do I map that to who's within the business? Help me build a talent pool now that I can go and target to develop so that I can basically even reallocate labor within the business to a high growth, high need area. So it really is I think that the tech is amazing with what it can do and with how it can help us get to very granular pieces of information that are more actionable.
Definitely. It'll help give you that blueprint just to kind of have a baseline. And, obviously there's much more to just having access to it, but knowing how to utilize it and how to plan ahead and how to, connect your strategy to your technology is important. Yeah. And, as we wrap up here and we're thinking about, different maturity of companies and where they are. And for those that are maybe not, they don't have yet a talent mobility strategy, what would you advise, what would you advise them and how to get started? And what would you advise companies that are kind of along the way, but how do they make it better?
Yeah. So my first piece of advice, if you haven't gotten started, it's just even making a choice within your business to say, do we value internal mobility? Is this something we stand for? Is this something that's going to be part of our employee value proposition? Are we going to make it visible that there are opportunities within the business? So once again, just showing people that there are opportunities within the company makes them more likely to want to stay. So if you do nothing else, it really is show your people internally that there are positions available and that you care about them being in your business. I think when we don't demonstrate that there are opportunities open, that it gives people a feeling like we always think that there's something better out there than them. And that's not a nice way to come to work every day. That's not going to make you feel valued. So first step, just even show people that there are opportunities available and find a way for people to be able to register interest and have your talent teams look internally before seeking externally. So that's just the first one. And that's not a huge change to shift, in my opinion.
Pretty easy to do if you think about it.
I think it is. That should be a pretty easy one.
Right.
And then definitely as businesses progress, I think it's about how you extend the talent mobility story to be not just recruiting from within, but also how you are letting people own their own dynamic development and their omnidirectional career growth. And there's so much more that you can do to enable that culture to even be able to crowdsource your gigs and your projects and your mentors and your mentees. One, it takes a huge amount of work off us as L&D leaders, so it's a huge win, but it also helps us get more meaningful development to more people. So I think that it just depends on where you are within your strategy. So you can either be newer, just open up those opportunities, Or if you're more advanced and more mature in your strategy, just, I think, constantly be challenging yourself on what else can we do? How can we open this up more? And how can we continue to democratize agency over development?
Well said. Thank you, Katie. Thank you for joining me today and just sharing your I can tell you're really passionate about it, and also passionate about your experience at Cornerstone. So it's nice to hear stories like that, and especially kind of in the world that we're in. I love to hear positive relationships between the companies and their key members of their teams. So I'm really happy to hear from you, and it was been a great talk today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. It's such a privilege to be able to be here and talk about a topic I'm so passionate about. So thank you so much.
And good luck in your new position. I'm sure you're going to do wonders, and can't wait to continue our conversation here soon.
Oh, I hope we can. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Take care. Bye-bye.